Space, the final frontier. Well, okay, not really. All right, take two. Here in the Mitten State, welcome to Code 47, bringing you all things Star Trek, spanning the quadrants, the best thing since the neutral zone.
Back again, party time on the Excellent, on the Code 47 on the Secret Friends Unite podcasting network. This is episode 92, and I am your humble servant, Charlie Carden, Trek Lord of West Michigan, Fleet Captain of Starfleet International, the USS Grand Petoskey, joined as always by my spectacular, I don't want to say side men or sidelings or co-host orts.
How about
Brent? Yeah, there you go. My cherished advisors. That was the voice of Kay that you're hearing. Kay, happy Sunday to you.
Happy Sunday to you, Charlie.
Very good. And Peter, returning from places far unknown, getting out of the torpedo on the Genesis planet that crashed in Kentucky. Welcome back.
Thanks.
Oh, come on. You can do better than that. I mean, all right, I guess. Anyway, and then we decided to bring in a ringer, SFU's prominent third party, the naysayer, the man with 1,000 opinions. That would be Todd Oxtra. Todd, welcome back. It's been a while.
Long live and prosper, my friends.
Long live and
right?
sideways.
Oh, there it is. Now I got it right.
I like it. Very good.
You're starting out real strong in a Star Trek podcast there, Todd.
There you go.
I'm bringing
you
it.
See, that's you can't count five minutes on when we're doing Holocron and I don't start talking about Star Trek. So, but anyway, we've got some exciting stuff going on. We've got a flux of doing something different because we don't have a new episode to talk about until next month when Picard returns on Feb 16. So over the next two episodes, we're going to be talking about some films that we've not gotten to. One of which is that we're going to talk about today is a revisit from way back when, but with something extra, and we've got some new voices. But before we get to that, we launched our Patreon this week, the Secret Friends Unite Patreon. Todd and I have been making Secret Friends Unite since 2014, and it took Mark coming along and a bunch of hemming and hawing for us to finally, take this to the next level. And we've got some new folks. One of our upper tiers of our Secret Friend Squad does actually give somebody a little added recognition on the podcast. In this case, we've got our first three people from the how do I pronounce the gentleman's last name, Todd?
It's Nias.
Nias, there you go. So it's Sean, his daughter Stella, and his son Henry are at our top tier of Patreon. And one of the great things they get for that is they get assigned a Star Trek alien race or race whatever, and a Starfleet job. So we're going to kick it off. We'll go youngest to oldest. So, Peter, I'm going to put you in the hot seat. You're going to give a Star Trek race and a Starfleet job to 10-year-old Henry. Go for it.
All right. Well, I'm going to give Henry the race of Andorian because they're cool.
Big blue antenna.
Yeah, pretty intense. And for a job, I'm going to stick with my department and make you a, plasma specialist in engineering.
There you go.
Fun fact about Henry, he just got a 3D printer, so he is on that track of being in the engineering realm. Well, then if he really wants
that,
then
nailed it.
Specialist. There you go.
Replicator specialist. Very nice. All right, Kate, you're up with Stella. What's she got going on?
Well, I think that Stella should be an Aloran, which was the race that Guinan was, or Guinan is. And I think that they've been a little underserved for all of the abilities that they seem to have. So I'm going to say that she probably would be a number one because she's
gotcha.
She's going to be able to keep a captain in line and also be really in touch with what's going on. I think they'd be really intuitive. So that's where I'm going to say Stella goes.
Nice. All right. And I'll tackle Sean, who's the big boss. He is a Klingon. And he is the ship's counselor. I know. What an odd couple. He's going to outdo Deanna Troi with, instead of saying, Captain, I sense that, he's going to say, Captain, I'm going to kill them. That's gonna be his catchphrase. So yes, Sean, the Klingon counselor, not really caring about your feelings because he's a Klingon. I love it.
Rage therapy. So he uses rage to heal people.
Right, it's that smash therapy. You know how there's all those break rooms that are opening up all over the country, where you just go into a room and you have a baseball bat and you get to smash old TVs or like an old blender or something. You know what I mean?
Did they have Sean in that Lower Decks episode where they went to the spa day and they had that Klingon in the room who was throwing a bunch of stuff, and they were like, he actually went over his time by about 20 minutes, but we're afraid to let him out.
Right. I think maybe that was him. That's incredible.
Sean making his first cameo already.
I love it. Well, good. Well, Sean, Stella, and Henry, thank you for supporting us right out the gate. We are very grateful, and we will talk a little bit about our Patreon at the end of the show. And so without further ado, Todd, you're coming back to us. You've been with us for a couple of the movie episodes. I think we did Star Trek V way back when. I think we brought you back most recently for Star Trek Insurrection, which you and I saw in the theater.
No, you did not.
Wasn't that you?
I've only been on once before, and that was for obviously the best Star Trek movie of all time.
Right. Oh yeah, Star Trek V. Yes, the Shatner masterpiece. I swear you were on for Insurrection, but anyway,
I was not. Because that would have been a bad one for me too.
I know because
I think that was still when I was kind of a pseudo guest, so I know that I was on for that one.
Because I know that we haven't done a movie since Nemesis, and boy, did we have fun with that. But at any rate, we're gonna take the format a little bit differently today. We're going to be talking about the original film, Star Trek: The Motion Picture. But we're going to talk about the director's edition, which was released in standard definition on DVD in 2001, and it received a beautiful, super duper re-release in HD last year, and Peter and myself sat through kind of a Q&A with some producers here in Grand Rapids, watched the film back in December, so got just last month. And then I had seen another showing of it back in May when they first released it, and of course it's on disc, it's on Paramount Plus if you've not watched it. I think they put it back on Paramount Plus. There's been some juggling of them now. Oh, it's on HBO right now. There's been some juggling right now.
Find it.
I hear you. I own it anyway, but yeah, it was juggling around. And actually, we do have, this is interesting, we do have an extra code for the film that I think we're going to plan to loop into potentially a Patreon giveaway. So that stay tuned for that. But at any rate, because I've seen the film so much, and Peter, this certainly extends to you if you feel the same, I'm going to kind of sit back, and I think the balance of this segment is going to be about Todd and Kay talking about someone who is seeing the film for the first time, that would be Kay, and somebody who's seen the film for the first time in a very, very long time, which would be Todd. So without further ado, Peter, I'll let you read the summary that I have here, and then I say we just turn it over.
All right.
Go for it.
So the motion picture, if you don't remember, launched in '79. The USS Enterprise proudly soars again in this new, beautifully restored director's edition of the original Star Trek movie classic. This new director's cut features enhanced visual effects and a new sound mix, supervised by legendary director Robert Wise. When an unidentified alien destroys 3 Klingon cruisers, Admiral James T. Kirk returns to the newly transformed USS Enterprise to take command. Leonard Nimoy, DeForest Kelley, and the cast from the acclaimed original Star Trek television series mobilize at warp speed to stop the alien intruder from its relentless flight towards Earth.
I appreciated that you got Kirk's cadence going on there.
I realized that I was doing it. I was like, okay, I'm just going to ham it now.
Yeah.
We have Captain Kirk right here in front of us.
Right. You bet. Without the glasses, I don't need to read anything. Oh, God, now I can't see. Okay, so, God, Kay, Todd, take it away, please. What was this making you feel? How did this make you feel?
It was a little wandering, but it was fun, I think. I was trying to watch it, so... Again, as you said, I have not seen this. Obviously, I did not see it when it first came out. I was maybe not born yet. So
definitely.
And so I tried to watch it from a perspective of, that time frame, how like theatrical pacings went, how cinema pacing went, the special effects that they had at the time. So I was trying to watch it with a grain of salt and being like, okay, let's look past some of the camp. Let's look past some of like the weirdness that it went on. And I mean, besides me laughing really hard at the fact that it took like 20 minutes for Kirk to like fly around the Enterprise and actually get to the Enterprise.
It's 13 minutes.
Yeah, I was I seriously timed it. And I was like, I think it was 40 minutes before the ship actually left dock in a 2-hour movie that was about space exploration.
Mm-hmm. We called that, when my brother and I were growing up, we called that a mercy killing, the time. Because it was just like, it was, I think, Peter, you and I have called it, like ship porn? Because it's like,
That's exactly what it was.
Yeah, no, there was 3 minutes of uninterrupted, just this star zoomies, 3 minutes before we even got to the Paramount logo and then the actual credits. And I was like,
God, what was that? It was just like star scene and then music.
Right. I honestly thought my TV had broken, that I had paused it or somehow like looped it or something, because it was like, what is going on?
The way to watch that, and as I said I'd shut up, and I'll put this one last little bit in. The way to watch that is to have the disc, which I do, but you turn on the text commentary by Michael and Denise Okuda, they're technical people, and there's words to fill you out while the music plays, so you get music in the show. But other than that,
commentary.
It's just like,
okay.
Yeah, I always watch the film with their commentary, even though it's been the same commentary since 2001. They didn't update it, but when I watched it again, I did that again, and that way you can sit through that music and just be like, okay, well, because it tells you that here's a brief history of Star Trek, blah 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 blah. Okay, now I'm going on mute. Watch me.
So Katie, I think my history with this, you're far younger than I am. I still did not see this when it came out, but I saw it on VHS at my aunt's house because she was the only one that we knew that lived close to us that had a VCR. That's how bad, old times this was. So she rented it, and I was probably like 6, and I don't remember a damn thing. I just remember it being very boring, and I'm like, okay, it's Star Trek, right? This should be fun, because I used to watch TOS with my dad on Channel 50 on reruns. So I'm like, I'm excited. There's going to be lots of cool stuff. No. And I'm like, okay. So now going back to this, to your point, and someone brought up ship porn, this made me think of, okay, this is the first time we actually have a big budget to show things we've never seen before, to do things with modern technology. And it's almost seemed like this was proof of concept to say, hey, this is why we should do more Star Trek, because look what we can do, and it will be amazing. But wow, other than that, this movie was of a time. And it almost felt like a bit of a parody of itself in a lot of ways from the original show. And I don't know what it was trying to do. It was like it was like a Master of None. It was trying to be like a really long episode of Star Trek, but it felt like it abandoned a lot of things you normally would get from the original series, which was at least something would happen fairly regularly to keep the pace up, maybe because it was TV versus movie. So, and obviously being a direct response to Star Wars, which just came out 2 years earlier, they wanted to be something diametrically opposed to that, not a lot of action. And so I don't know, it was weird. Some of the things I picked up, I had the subtitles on because I do that when I work out, and I've got it on. There was a song title name, and I'm like, it was something like Dream to Fly or something.
That
Life is just...
That was
that's how that
song.
Yeah, Leah's theme. Yeah, in the beginning. Yeah.
Song for
okay.
Star Trek.
Okay, because it was weird because it kept on coming up, and I'm like, okay, I didn't know they had a theme song name, so I'm like, okay, that's interesting. But they didn't do that for anyone else, so it's like it was just very odd. It's like that one specifically hung up. But yeah, it was definitely interesting how this show was this movie was I guess trying to reinvent Star Trek in a way for a modern audience that had been matured, seen more things. What was it? 2001 had already been out, so we'd got more elevated sci-fi on screen. So I don't know if it was trying to be elevated sci-fi again, or it was just trying to elevate Star Trek. So I don't know, Katie.
I think that honestly, watching it felt much more like TNG with TOS characters than it did with TOS. Like the little bit of that I've seen of TOS, it's much more campy, much more like kind of Monster of the Week flavor, where TNG is a lot of, philosophical discussions and struggles and, ethics considerations, where like there's a spot where like Bones totally calls out Kirk, which I was like screaming at that point when Kirk is sitting there, and was it Decker? He's like, you need to stop competing. I'm like, dude, you have been competing with him since you literally stepped foot on this ship. You have been trying to undermine him. Don't you start with me. And then Bones immediately is like, slap, slap, slap. You're the one who's competing, Kirk.
And he can get away with it, too. Because, he shows up on the ship, and the very first thing he does is like, let's talk. You're fired. What? Yes. Yeah, I'm the dude and whatever, and you're going to stick around, but I'm going to give you a demotion. And by the way, you're also going to be the science guy, so you got to sit in Spock's chair. So, whatever. We got a mission, so this is what we got a
second job. But he gave him a second job just after the fact, too. Oh, you'll also be this.
Right.
Like, what?
Well, that's
right, exactly.
The science officer got fried in the teleporter because they needed to have a Vulcan for 5 seconds, but then they also needed to have an excuse to bring Spock back. So they fried the Vulcan in the transporter, and then literally like 20 seconds later, they're making fun of the Doctor for not wanting to go through that exact same transporter.
Yeah, after they were like, that's cool, we fixed it, it's good.
Yeah, and he goes, did you get them? And he goes, what we did get didn't survive long, fortunately. And then they're making fun of the Doctor and like rolling their eyes because he doesn't want to go through.
Yeah, right.
I am taking the space elevator. I'm not setting foot in a transporter.
Yeah, right. And I'll kick this back to Peter. Peter, have you read the novelization like I have?
Probably one. It's sitting on my shelf.
Okay.
I just don't remember.
On your shelf on the bridge of the Enterprise behind you. There's bookshelves back there. I don't see one.
It's like a tiny library in your neighborhood, right? They have a tiny library that people can take books.
Yeah,
we have one of those couple doors down. In the novelization, which was written by Gene Roddenberry, I don't know that makes it canon. I get that's a bird of another feather. But the other person who gets melted in the transporter was supposed to be Kirk's wife. Like he got married during that 2.5 years that they were home. But since he has no reaction to the fact that the people died, I'm guessing that part of it's not canon. But anyway, she was another admiral and they met, got married and whatever. But it was just like,
any other media. So I would assume that's
exactly. That does make me want to go back and read that novel again, because if I'm misremembering, or just look at Memory Beta, which is Beta Canon website for Star Trek all the books.
But I did think the story was much more engaging as far as it was really about like Kirk's dichotomy with Starfleet and what his relevance still was, and kind of him trying to hold on to like the glory days, or if he can let that go and what that would mean for him. And kind of the same thing with Spock. Anytime I run into a dude who's sitting there talking about how women are super emotional and, you need to be logic about it and everything, I'm just going to be like, okay, feature. Sure. That sounds like a great idea. Because the entire...
Yeah, right.
I loved that the entire story was about that there has to be some sort of human or emotional element to fulfill yourself, especially because there was like kind of this worship of like Vulcan logic and reason and, devoid of emotion. It turns out like, no, actually to elevate yourself as an entity, you need to be able to have that emotional connection. And I thought that was a really cool kind of send up for it, and kind of like find like the whole, like it being Voyager 6, like that was very obvious from the get-go. As soon as it's like, I'm going to go find the creator on Earth. I'm like, well, obviously this is old technology that somehow advanced itself through a wormhole or through a portal or through space alien technology. And now it's coming back looking for NASA. Duh. But in the whole,
it's going to come back and find Agamus. Watch out.
Yeah. The whole like machine baby, like watching them have sex in an alien way was really weird. Where everybody starts glowing.
The lights is and to Todd's point, it was so very of its time, because it super felt like the V'ger brain complex at the end with the glowing lights and this. It felt very disco. And no one will ever forget when McCoy beams up. There's an exact moment, because he's got the outfit, he's got a shirt like this, big old gold medallion. But there's a shot tilted down, pointed up at the back of the transporter room, which kind of shimmers. It looks like he's in a disco, and he's very pimpant. That big old long beard and my God, it was very much of the time.
Did he request? I mean, did some actors request like the deep V uniform? Because seriously, I mean, and that was what we would call about the whole uniform thing. I don't know what it was with Star Trek these days. I've kind of given up. Like, they are not standardized at all. It's like everybody bring your own. It's casual work, dress for your day. Sometimes there's a deep V, some deep V with a collar. Sometimes it's a high neck. Spock brings in the mock turtleneck.
Right.
I'm like,
he got to wear his outfit.
And then Kirk is like dressing like differently. He goes here, then he's wearing the short sleeve thing that you're wearing, Charlie. But then he's wearing the gray uniform. And I'm like, at this point, I'm like, they don't know what the hell they're doing. Like, nobody understands the rules of uniforms and what you dress for. It's not like it's a battle dress uniform. Like, I was in the military. Right. There is standards for why you dress a certain way.
You have like 5 outfits, right?
That's the thing. Right. Starfleet isn't a military. But
still, like, even non-military organizations, they have standardized dress codes because of.
I also that you're on a ship 24/7, and yes, you're going to have a uniform, but there's also going to be different variations, so you can be comfortable.
Well, and
but I think this is like totally ridiculous. I mean, I picked out like 85 different variations, and I'm like, that doesn't even make sense, because then you can't even identify people's roles very easily.
They do it really well, because they have the rec deck scene where Kirk calls everybody in so they can watch. They watch the space station Epsilon 9 dissolve. The thing is, and here's the benefit about that text commentary I was telling you about by Michael and Denise Okuda. If you watch it, at one point when they're closer to the films, it's addressing the uniforms. The costume designer was Robert Fletcher, who went on to do costumes for TNG. Wanted a lot of subdued tones, because on the big screen he didn't want anything taken away from the actors' faces. And yeah, you're right. There are probably 10 to 12, maybe 13 different documented versions of uniforms in this, including the radiation suits in engineering, different utility suits. There's ones that zip up. There's ones that are wraparounds. There's ones that are jumpsuits with pockets. There's that are one piece. There's two pieces. Blah blah blah. It's a whole dynasty. But the people who made the show, and who were in the movie, and I can attribute to this personally, hated those uniforms so much it was a negotiating point to come back and make Star Trek 2, that they couldn't have them anymore. And they turned them into the enlisted uniforms that you see through the rest of TOS and into TNG in that era. They dyed them a different color, and now they don't, about the background extras, they don't care what they wear. So, but the main actors, that's when they got the kick-ass jacket, the Monster Maroon in Star Trek 2.
So I was going to ask you about some of the weird parts of the uniforms too, because we're in the future. The logo insignia badge,
you like this thing?
Is stitched on like somebody's got a jacket. I'm stitching it on, but then you've got like the plastic thing, which I don't know what the purpose of that is.
There's a hypothetical purpose. Hypothetical purpose. Peter raised
his hand. You've got a badge item, but you've got like a wristband, which apparently is the communicator. Right.
Yeah. Now, Peter, go ahead. You were going to speak up about the PerScan, which is it's even a non-canonical name.
Yeah, the wristband is the communicator at this point, which actually does return again in Star Trek 2.
Yes, that's true, because the other guy was wearing them.
Belt is actually it's brought in from the animated series, actually.
Oh, great.
Is that really? Oh, God. Oh, boy. Right.
So, yep. So if you've seen the animated series, there's a couple points where they wear these belts. But they turn them on, and they have a force field that gives them an oxygen bubble.
Oh, I just thought... And again, I had a dude make this for me, and I swap it between this uniform and I have the gray one, which, before we started rolling, the guys were like, no, wear the deep V. It's sexier. And this, it's a little stretchier than I expected.
That is not what I
said. Okay, it was Peter. He said he messaged me about an hour beforehand. He just didn't want to.
If I have anything to say about the TNP uniforms, it's I never want to see them again.
That's fair. But no, I had read that this was just supposed to be like basically a heart rate monitor. It would monitor your vitals or whatever.
Yeah, it does the medical scans too, like how in TNG your communicator.
So why do only certain people have those then?
If you watch the movie, pretty much everyone wears them.
Do they?
Maybe
I missed that.
Yeah.
There's a couple points. The engineering staff doesn't have them for the
rad suits, the big white ones.
They have this thing on their sleeve that's supposed to have the same function.
There you go. And the rad suits do survive on through the rest of the franchise films. But as I said, the jumps, like the one-piece jumpsuit, becomes the enlisted jumpsuits, and other than that, everything went in the trash. It just absolutely ate.
Yeah, the shades of brown, like the Navy has a uniform where it's so the khakis bad. And it's ugly. And I think even Uhura, I was reading some notes. Uhura basically said, Nichelle Nicholas basically said, I don't want this thing. This is not a Nadhur thing what she would wear. So it was weird that the especially how iconic the uniforms in the TOS is. Bright, colorful, really iconic. And they went to this where everything just did not stand out, very muted. And to your point, Charlie, there was a reason. So I guess it makes sense. It just, to me, to Peter's point,
that really stood out was the Admiral's uniform that he wears at the beginning of the film, because it had the metal gold pin. It was two-tone. It had boards and everything.
Right. And the flip side of the uniforms were muted because they wanted to look at the characters' faces. In TOS, you had the gold, the red, and the blue because this was at the dawn of color television, and NBC really wanted to highlight that their show was in color, which is so weird.
Was this movie in Technicolor?
Probably weren't most things back then.
No, it's just we see it in Technicolor. That was right. I was going to ask, and Katie, maybe you have thoughts on this too. I was a little disappointed by the lack of really alien representation in Star Trek at this point. I think on the bridge crew we got the only new race or group we got was the guy with the big head. Ilya was brought in, obviously, a new race. I don't know if they had been introduced before.
No, she was new. She was new.
The
Deltans,
But other than that, it's
Deltans.
I mean, considering, like I said, Star Trek or Star Wars, what did they do? They had all these cool, visual effects with makeup and things like that, really dynamic. And in this one, it's like, nah, we're not doing that. We're going to have a little bit of this.
On the main crew, a lot of it, like the main cast was still majority human in Star Wars. I guess you had C-3PO and Chewbacca.
Yeah.
And so they had the opening scene with the Klingons, which I actually thought was really cool because I hadn't seen TOS Klingons before. So, I mean, besides the fact that they just kind of looked like they had that, the balding thing going on there because they had the ridge that went all the way back to the crown of their head. So I definitely think they got some upgrades in TNG. But I thought that was really cool. I did like seeing the Deltans. I wish that they would have talked a little bit more about it besides her just being super sexy and having to take an act or a vow of celibacy.
That was what was that comment? Did he know? Did he know that?
It's the pheromones. They're pheromones.
Are so sexually attractive that if they don't take an act or a vow of celibacy, then they are not allowed to join Starfleet because everybody is super attracted to them. So they got I think she was actually a model to play her.
Persis Kambata. She was Indian, native of India,
She did an amazing job. I thought she did an amazing job, especially when Beecher took her over. But it was one of those things where I was I would have liked to have more of her backstory come through besides just, hey, I'm super sexy, and I obviously had a romantic past with Decker.
Right. Well, and it's funny because that's the odd contrast between an ongoing television show where you get to learn about the characters, you learn about Spock's background and you learn about McCoy's background as TOS goes on. And of course in TNG and DS9 and all the shows that follow. But with this, it's here's a new character. We're not really we're giving her two pieces of backstory and then the story moves forward. And then, that's very true. That's very true. And it's a race that we've not really heard much of, but for one reference in Enterprise, Peter, if I'm not mistaken, because Travis Mayweather was talking about we ran into a ship of Deltans when I was 15 because he grew up on a cargo ship. And he's like, I was going through puberty and these ladies were so sexy. It was just, multiple problems with Enterprise that Kate will tell you all about. Glittery blue underwear.
I thought she was just familiar with Kirk's antics and just was putting it out there. Back up.
Oh, could be.
Fair.
Yeah.
Also fair.
You're right. That is a double combination.
It was part of his contract to come back. He had to tell, he has to, it's like that when the sexual predator going to a neighborhood, they have to go to the door. It's
oh my God.
So I don't know.
You know what? What's really revolting about that is that there was, or at least that was the rumor, that there was a casting couch with all through Star Trek that included the films, that it was even Kim Cattrall and Kirstie Alley, and then this poor woman. I think if I'm remembering correctly, I don't know, I probably shouldn't impugn William Shatner since I'll be in the Star Trek cruise with him in a month, and if he hears this, he'll throw me overboard, or at least he'll try. He's 90. He's not that spry. So, okay, I did drop in the show notes, so as you're listening to the show notes, some I will call them improvements between the theatrical version of this and the director's edition. Some of the changes they made. It's a link to a YouTube video, so please enjoy that. But in essence of wrapping this up, let's go person to person. Let's have kind of a high and low and a final thought. So let's start with Peter, who's been the most quiet of all of us, even though I said I would shut up, and I didn't. But Peter, high, low, and franchise contribution.
Well, for me, at least for the director's cut, the high was seeing the Enterprise in all of its HD glory. I know we give those shots crap, but I love those shots. That's really the only part of the movie that I thoroughly enjoy.
Really, really works. Yeah.
Because there's moments where when I saw it in the theater, it was like, man, it almost looks like they re-rendered it. They didn't. They just grabbed all the stuff and recomposited it, and it looks amazing.
Right. It was pretty impressive.
So for me, the updated starships were the best part of this film. The starships were always the best part of the film for me anyway. Mm-hmm. Low. This is a 45-minute TOS episode dragged into 2 hours.
Drag kicking and screaming.
And it feels like it. It's got a decent story. It's a classic TOS style of like exploring humanity and what does it mean to be human with that dichotomy between logic and reason and reason and emotion. Yeah. So it's got there's good bones to a story there, but the execution is, in my not so humble opinion, meh. And the legacy to the franchise, I guess, is it gave us some spectacular new venues. Being in cinema, we could see the Enterprise on the big screen. The redesign of the ship is one of the best starship designs that Star Trek has ever had. And it just kicked off a new era where we got to see the TOS characters in longer adventures. Thankfully, in the next one, we get a little bit of a better adventure. But like that was its legacy. It kicked Star Trek into a wider field where you could see it in more than just reruns, and then eventually led on to the plethora of Star Trek we have now. So
the plethora, excellent, cool. Todd, take it away.
Oh, wow. So highs, I would say that I think I don't want to repeat everything Peter said, but I think it was the attention to detail you'd never seen before. I was thinking about when the ship was going out of dock and you saw the little crewman on the outside doing a flip.
Yeah.
And that was something they didn't need to do, but it was attention to detail that was very cool about people being very excited about the Enterprise relaunching. So that was really cool. I think it was amazing that the last time people probably saw Star Trek before this came to the big screen was probably on a 16-inch TV, crappy visuals. I mean, so even just the medium of being able to see something on the big screen in a much better visuals, it was amazing. And once again, this is kind of the first thing I can remember having a franchise reinvigorated with fan fervor and like a proof of concept that this can work. And so I think that's the biggest contribution that they showed that this could work. I don't think this movie did that great, but obviously, to Peter said, the next movie is what really cemented it was going to stay around. So that was great that we got that. But they had to walk before they could run. So that's kind of where I would say. And you know what? We got some classic things that we loved, which was the Kirk and the Spock and the McCoy. So we got classic back of that.
I did love the scene in the officer's lounge, and McCoy just rips off Spock. Him changed the picture, just as warm and personable as ever. And Peter, what is it? What's the retort? I love it. Just say it to me.
Don't remember off the top of my head.
Oh my God!
Classic Peter.
I think he says something about how he's logical.
He says. Yes, nor have you, Doctor, as your continued predilection for relevancy demonstrates.
That's right. That's classic zing. Buzzing.
I love it. So much zing.
So low points, I think, once again, Peter hit so many things. Good structure of a classic story, like the anomaly, don't know what it is, have to investigate, then it's resolved. And the points that I think because they wanted to do like a more of a cinematic experience. I think that's what led them down the path of like these prolonged looks, a lot more of the orchestral theme coming through. That should be a drinking game. Every time you heard those classic Trek themes come on, it was a lot.
I nearly got a heart attack because the leveling was so bad. The voices were so quiet, and then all of a sudden it'd be like trumpets. And I'm like, oh my gosh.
But you know what? I don't think we saw anyone's acting game raised. So I think it probably might have a direction problem, because the amount of times I heard the call and the response of Spock, and then Spock. And then it's like the back and forth. And you're like, oh. So I don't know if Kirk was doing like an impression of himself at this point. Like that's what he remembered his acting was like. So it's like, I'm going to raise it to 11. But other than that, I think what really disappointed me, this is bringing back the crew. And essentially they were reduced. Yeah. Everybody else but the three majors were reduced to like one line here, very generic. It could have came from anybody else. It could have come from somebody we never met before. But these are classic characters that should have something, some growth or something like that. But, so they could have completely changed the plot to do more with the rest of the characters. So I think it was a big missed opportunity that we finally got more growth with those characters. Once again, felt like they were really underserved to that. So that's a really big disappointment for me. And under that, it did feel like the classic. I think Asimov actually gave some story like help to make sure things worked.
Yep. He sure did, yeah.
I mean, maybe this is me just watching too many sci-fi things. This felt like a very similar premise we've seen a billion times before, but maybe back in 1979, this wasn't as more of a rote premise, so maybe it was more original back then. But when I watch it now, I'm like, Katie, I think you said, yeah, I knew where this was going, so it didn't feel very original. But yeah, I mean,
it was spun right off of a TOS episode called The Changeling, which had a rogue droid they find in space that it's the exact same thing. I'm from the past, my circuits are damaged, I'm trying to find my creator. I mean, it was the same shit. So yes, you're absolutely right.
Yeah, and then lastly, I guess the thing that would be why this is still important for Star Trek was they got the theme song for the Next Generation from this. So I'm like, I didn't realize that. Now I'm like, oh, I guess that's what happened. So very cool.
Well, if you get the Farpoint soundtrack, you can hear the original theme that they were going to use for Next Generation. Be happy we didn't get that.
Was it as bad as Enterprises?
No, it just feels very, very mid 80s.
Oh, it did not. It did
synthesizers
not.
No, actually, if you watch Farpoint, you can hear the theme. They use it especially in the first season. But it's one of those like if it had been there, TNG would not have aged as well as it.
Not exactly as classic. All right, Katie, take us home. I'm going to forego this for time, but I want to hear your thoughts before we wrap it up.
Yeah, I think highs for me were like being able to see the crew for some of the first times and really being able to watch it grow and watch, at least like Todd said, with the core group, you got to see a lot of kind of growth and dynamicism between them, which was really, really enjoyable. Lows for me would definitely be that it felt like I was watching two different stories, because you had the whole V'ger tension with Spock trying to figure out like if his human side he should embrace it or if he was trying to forgo that. And then you had this whole like Kirk, am I relevant, am I not relevant thing going on. And I would have really wished they would have just forgone that other part and just focused on Spock's story and the catalyst between him and V'ger. Because I think that was a much more interesting situation and you never really got the full idea of why that draw was there. And so I would have really, really liked to see more of that. And I also agree that I think like Uhura had one line besides just being like background noise. And I really was disappointed that the secondary crew didn't get more front time than what like other crew members did. They've got these brand new crew members that I do not really care about or know about. And they're major catalysts in this story pushing forward. And I was just like, okay, sure, I guess.
I mean, you can really tell with those secondary cast members, even in the opening titles, because there's 10 names on one play card and guest starring, blah, 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 and it's everybody. So it's just, you're right. They're all just, it's a big ball of twine, you know what I mean, of all those characters.
And I think as far as legacy to the franchise, I think it really did a good job of cementing itself as something different than Star Wars and saying we are not Star Wars, we are going to be something different, which I think was really, really important. Like, you know, to Todd's point, this came out 2 years after Star Wars did. And so to come on and be like, we're not going to be like, fantasy sci-fi, we are going to be philosophical discussions about what the future of space exploration could mean for humanity. And not that there's anything, better or worse to either of those. I love both of them equally, but it does mean the reason why I can love both of them equally is because they are so different. And I think that that's what really helped bring Star Trek and make it so that it could be a separate movie and it could be its own thing and they could keep growing because they were both growing in different directions.
Right. True. Wow. This has been really dynamic. I've really appreciated this. So, Todd, thanks for joining us. Wow, it's kind of crazy to wrap it up. So, Todd, where do people, besides the obvious, where do people find you out there on the internet?
Yeah, at T Oxtra on Twitter. That's where I primarily stay. And just appreciate everybody joining us on this journey of Patreon as we join that. So go to our Patreon page. Go to patreon.com/SecretFriendsUnite and learn more about us. Once again, glad I could join you guys. This is a lot of fun. I'm a big fan of Star Trek, but not as devoted to it as you are. But I love hearing about it. I'm glad we have a show. I'm glad we have a show about this, and it's great.
Me too. Awesome. Well, cool. Well, Todd, we'll bid you adieu. We're going to take a brief pause, and we're going to come back and tackle the end of season 3 of Star Trek: Next Generation. We'll be right back. Oh yeah, back for part 2. Hello. That was an awesome conversation about Star Trek motion picture and having Todd in. He what can I say? He's good at this. I love having him around sometimes. But anyway, we are wrapping up what some, including myself, would be considered kind of the vanguard of what changed things around for Star Trek's Next Generation. Season 3, which is now, we're getting into late in 1990, and the show is getting into its final stretch of 6 episodes, most of which I think are huge winners. But let's kick things off with the fun one. Katie, this kind of got your name written all over it. Why don't you take the first episode?
Thanks. All right, so I love Peter. Thank you for that face of you just being like, no, man, this is going to be. All right, so we've got episode 21, Hollow Pursuits, directed by Cliff Bull, written by Sally Caves, aired April 30th, 1990. Lieutenant Reginald Barclay uses the holodeck as an escape as he uses use of the holodeck as an escape interferes with his duties. Excuse me for trying to read that.
It happens.
Yeah. Meanwhile, the Enterprise suffers from a mysterious and random malfunctions. Oh, so I will say I like Barclay a lot more now than I did when I first saw this episode. Like his redeeming factors in Voyager and, as his character progresses, I understand the social awkwardness that he has as someone who also has a lot of social awkwardness that I've had to try to work through. There feels like there's a lot of violation that happens, not only with having, like, it's one thing to have people in the holodeck so you can kind of have, vent some steam or something, have some weird interaction. Sexual interactions, I would say that might be some gray area consent things.
Especially when we get into lower decks and find out who's got to clean all that up.
Exactly. Yes. So it was very much just a lot of creep factor for me the entire time watching it. Just very, very cringe. As I said, I have been on the receiving end of several Barclay type characters in my life, and I was not vibing with this episode. I don't know. What do you guys think?
I totally agree. Seriously, it's played for laughs and a bit again consent issues. Same thing Riker said. Well, people shouldn't be recreated on the holodeck essentially without their consent. I can't disagree with him there, but everybody does it. But you can really empathize with Geordi, and I really like early on. He's like, we just got to get rid of this guy because I can't stand to be around him, and he sucks. And they're talking to Picard, and he's like, well, that's kind of your job to find a way to make him a part of your team because you're his commanding officer. So why don't you, knock it off? So I like that Picard, captain's got a captain. Sometimes you got to take, the drama and put a pin in it and deflate the balloon. Because both Geordi and Riker were like, yeah, he sucks, dude, and he got pawned off on us by this other captain who said he was great, but he knew he wanted to get rid of the guy because he's a weirdo. And then Picard has that little speech. It's too easy to just get rid of somebody that everybody thinks is a problem. So we're going to address this. You're going to be a CO to this guy, and they end up becoming best buds,
right? And
which is super cool.
It's really great because once, Picard kind of slaps Geordi in line and is like, hey, what are you doing to help this guy then? Like, are you just continually antagonizing him? I mean, they're calling him Lieutenant Broccoli, for Pete's sakes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, which is super not adult or mature or certainly professional.
And so I think that helped Geordi kind of see, like, how they were talking over him every time Barclay had an idea. Like you saw with Wes, where they were just kind of, not necessarily sparring, but it was just that kind of like competitiveness of like, okay, talking over each other, like let's just get ideas out. And Barclay needs a moment to be able to, really articulate what he's thinking. And so Geordi calls Wes out on that. It's like, hey, listen, you didn't do anything wrong, but you need to give him a chance to speak before you just talk over him so that Barclay can, build his confidence up. And I thought that side of this story was really, really great, of watching Barclay kind of come into his own and seeing how having a good support structure can really help someone flourish.
Right. No, I love it. Peter, how about you?
I think you kind of hit everything on the head for what I think about this episode for the most part, with Barclay's character growth and everything. I love Barclay over the course of time. He is also a character that I can relate to on multiple levels, not the creep part. It's just
You don't make your own holodeck characters?
Yeah.
A lot of that probably, speaks to a lot of the social anxiety that maybe a lot of Trekkers have, I mean, people who enjoy Star Trek. So he's the everyman kind of Star Trek character, because not everybody is a Kirk or a Riker or a Data or a Picard. Some of us are just, regular schlubs that, I mean, he describes himself. Yeah, he says, you go to a party and you feel more comfortable studying a potted plant in the corner than speaking to anybody. I mean, and that's they really, hit the nail on the head with this. So yeah, I was pretty impressed.
I do have to say, I do appreciate some of the humor in this, mostly the character moments.
Yeah,
the one that really stuck out to me was like when Troy tells Riker, "Oh, you can't just start deleting things, blah 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 blah," and then there's the version of her, and she's like, "Oh no," and Riker's like, "Belay that," and then you just get this shit-eating grin. Like, yes, it's not the greatest, but just the crap between the two characters is just hilarious.
Yes,
exactly.
Or the fact that he made Riker super short.
Yeah, he's super short. And then it's just like, well, some people find your height intimidating. You just see Riker go. Like, that whole bit where they have to face that's just
I think if they would have taken out the sexual aspect of the Doctor and Troy, it would have been so much better. But the weird like sexual conquest that he had with those two kind of playing is really
the Goddess of Empathy part with when I was a kid, I didn't pick up on any of the sexual stuff, so to me it was just like, oh look, it's Athena, whatever, and I'm like, that's weird, and then I moved on. So to me, it's just a funny moment, because when I first saw it, it was just, there wasn't any sexual connotation. It was just like, he's got Troy dressed up and she thinks it's fun. She doesn't like it, and Riker's giving her crap for it. So no doubt. Contextually, that's why I think that's funny. But but yeah, the humor in the episode it's got some misses, but it's generally pretty funny and
agreed.
Yeah, it's definitely like a hit and miss. Like where it's strong, it's really really strong, and where it's weak, it's like ugh.
Yeah, right.
I mean, that's exactly that's for a lot of season 3 of TNG, where they're like they hit really really high points, and then when they go low, you're like, ooh,
that's low.
Yes.
All right. Well, cool. Let's move it along. Peter, next one is you.
The Most Toys. Directed by Timothy Bond, written by Sherry Goodharts, aired May 7th, 1990. Kivas Fajo, you'll hear that name again. An obsessed collector is determined to add data to his private collection of unique items.
Ooh. My.
Yeah. This episode is decent, I think. It's not like my favorite, but it's decent. You get a whole bunch of kind of commentary on materialism and what it means to just, I just want things, and it doesn't matter what it takes for me to get it. And if one of those things is a person, who cares?
Yeah, right. Yeah,
and
the ultimate expression.
So it was interesting that whole thing, but also like ultimately there's this distinction that Data, we have this assumption that Data can't hurt anyone, or that he won't willingly hurt someone who's unarmed or whatever.
Right.
He's basically Asimov's laws of robotics, where he can't willingly hurt
can't kill all humans.
Yeah. But there's a moment in the end which I found very interesting, and they focus on it for a second because they want to leave it nebulous, which is classic TNG, which is really, really good, I think. But there's a moment where Fajo kills his assistant while she's trying to help Data escape. And then you see Data pick up the phaser. He points it at him, and Fajo's like, "Oh, you're not going to kill me." Da, 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 da. And then he gets
he did that exact dance.
Yeah, he's kind of doing it like this, but
jazz hands.
Yeah. So then, right at that moment, Data is beamed up, and I think it's O'Brien on the controls at that point. But he's like, "Sir, I think there was a phaser discharge." You just see Data go, and he says like a brief thing of like, "I don't think so," but it's one of those like Data was faced with just unadulterated murder, and we had this split second where Data had like a very, very human moment. This is one of those moments where Data just acts humanly in spite of himself, like he's not fully aware of it, and wants to basically avenge that upon the inflictor of this was a grave injustice, and you need to be punished for this. And I thought that was interesting. Like, is it the right response? That's why TNG doesn't answer that. They leave it nebulous.
Right.
But the fact that we see something that's that horrible, and then the instinct, and that's showing Data has human instincts, right? His instinct is to respond and to be like, "No, you did something wrong." It's something where there's a character building moment, and it's a step towards humanity for Data. We can argue whether it's a good step or a bad step, but it's a step.
See, and that's interesting because I saw that as a different type of point, because Fajo is sitting there arguing like, "Oh, you want to like kill me and avenge her, but you can't, and I'm going to keep you here regardless because you can't hurt me." And Fajo ends up making this argument kind of for his death, where he's saying, "You cannot escape, and I will keep you, and I will be, you're basically your tormentor and your captor." So in Data's mind, I was like, oh no, logically, he's going to look at this as, yes, you cannot kill unless it's out of self-defense. And at this point, this is self-defense, because for him to be able to survive and for him to be able to escape and do what he was programmed to do, he's going to have to kill this guy.
Yeah, there's that too.
Right?
Yeah, that's what I took that of like logically, you're not making a case for yourself, bud, because Data can reason this out then.
I must have forgotten that line, but yeah.
Yeah. No, yeah, you're right.
I mean,
I know, yeah. Super creeped out by it.
Though, as far as like what Data's reasoning was.
Right. No, I agree. This is an episode that I think maybe unparalleled. Their high stayed high. I didn't necessarily think there was something where it was kind of sucking the bottom of it. I think they hit all their points correctly, and much to Peter's point, they left so much of it up for conversation and interpretation, which is really what the best of this kind of thing can do, and what TNG has to offer, and where they are, really starting to hit their stride with a solid group of writers and a solid, kind of overlay, hate or love Rick Berman, and Michael Piller, if you will, or that whole group of them. But they were really settling upon something special at this point, and starting to get, I think, a unique perspective that created discussion, which is, I think, what really engaged this. As so much of a show that touched, we always say over on SFU, that touched the four quadrants of viewers, men, women, over a certain age, under a certain age, to get kids and older people, adults and older adults really enjoying it for different reasons. So I think it's a good example of it. So awesome. All right, moving along. Lucky number 23, well, it's my lucky number, is Sarek, directed by Les Landau, story by Mark Cushman and Jake Jacobs. Don't know either one of them. Teleplay by Peter S. Beagle. Great name. Never heard of him. From May of 1990, the Enterprise is plagued by an outbreak of violence when it is visited by the renowned Vulcan ambassador Sarek. Great piece of trivia. Sidebar, was having a conversation with my mother yesterday, and she just totally threw this out there. I put it in our Discord if you happen to read it. Mark Leonard, who was not only Sarek, Spock's father, was the first bumpy-headed Klingon in Star Trek The Motion Picture, which you heard us talking about, and then also played the first Romulan we ever saw, also with the pointed ears. From Chicago, grew up in South Haven, Michigan. I had all these years. I was like, I said I was owned by my mom on that one, because South Haven's my mom's hometown. We do photo shoots there with the chapter from time to time because it's such a beautiful locale on Lake Michigan. So anyway, I thought that was super cool. Sorry for sneaking that in. I was going to put that in the first part of the show, but I didn't. I did not. Anyway, we discover that Sarek is suffering from an incurable disease, so Picard must allow a mind meld with him so that the ambassador can complete the last vital negotiations between the Federation and the Lagerins. Wow. A lot going on here. Great bridge. And this was the first, I would say, more vital bridge, with the exception of, the fact that D. Kelly put on all the old age makeup and we saw him for 60 seconds in Encounter at Farpoint, the pilot episode, when he was walking Data around the ship and telling him about the value of the name Enterprise, and treat her like a lady, she'll always take you home. That was great, but it was cameo. This was fully fleshed out, leaving a lot of Easter eggs. Spock's name gets dropped more than once. Picard says, when I was a young lieutenant, I attended his son's wedding. You assume that's about Spock, but then again, Spock ends up having so many other family members. He's got an adopted sister. He's got a half brother. So you're assuming Spock's wedding is to whom? A lot of people think that was to Saavik, but you never can tell. So just a lot of great Easter eggs, kind of connecting overall what is now a burgeoning world between TOS and then the TNG era, which will shoot forward and give us so much more. And then giving us just a stand-up, spectacular appearance, or I say performance by Patrick Stewart as playing the emotionally ravaged Sarek when they do have that mind meld, which gives Sarek the ability to resume his confidence in his normal poise so he can go forward and complete this vital negotiation with a race that we've never heard of before or since, or why it was so important. Don't know, don't care. It's somewhat inconsequential, but for the fact that it's important. I feel like this was kind of hitting it on all spots. So what do you guys think?
This was the chunk, I feel like, of season 3 that just Patrick Stewart just ate it, because there were so many episodes where he just really shone as far as his acting skills and his job. Like, you can see that classic theater training come forward. You can see this, like, just the skill that he has, and the reason why they gave him, this role is because he's able to hold himself to such a caliber, and it is just absolutely great.
Peter.
I really like this episode. I particularly enjoy that weird balance that they have with Sarek, where they're like, he is like, he's a distinguished diplomat, like he has legacy, he's this really famous person, but he also has a mental condition, and it's degenerative, like, it's getting worse. And how they handled it, like, it felt very real, where like their people are hiding it from him to an extent. They're hiding it from everybody else if they can. And they're not managing it. Like, they're just like, it's kind of the, oh no, it doesn't exist.
Right. We'll just power on through. It'll be just fine.
And I thought that it was interesting how they kind of worked through that and eventually got Sarek himself to face that. Like, okay, I have to see that I have this. No one else wants me to see this. I need to see this. I need to do something about this. Please help me. And then Picard is willing to help. And I thought that was a really beautiful thing, where you have, like, it takes them a long time to like figure out what's going on and all that. And there's drama, and that's interesting.
Yeah. And it does really have some underpinnings of ageism to it, as far as like our fear of acknowledging, as we get older, and the issues that we might face while we're growing older, and how people won't let us acknowledge that or try to hide it from us because they think, we're too enfeebled or we're too fragile. or they just don't want to acknowledge it themselves because they know that inevitably it's kind of a mirror of, I might be this person and I wouldn't want to acknowledge it. So I'm not going to let them acknowledge it.
Right. And yeah. So that's one of the things that I really, really like about this episode. There's a little bit of continuity later with Sarek, where we get the wrap up to all this.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
But it's also just kind of a nice thing to see characters be vulnerable in this way. And this is one of the episodes where they actually do that. And they do that really, really well, I think. So solid episode.
Rock solid. Oh, Katie, you are not in luck for getting the jokey episode. So you're back around for the next one.
Okay,
sorry.
This is a great episode.
Yeah.
Menage a Trois.
Woohoo! Tra-la-la.
Yes, directed by Robert Legato, written by Fred Bronson and Susan Sackett. It aired May 28th, 1990. The Ferengi kidnap Counselor Deanna Troi and Lwaxana Troi and Commander Riker. And this episode was, I thought, just a hoot overall. I mean, again, this is one of those where you can almost see Patrick Stewart trying just not to laugh because he is just enjoying himself so much as he's waxing. He is waxing on poetically about his love
the
of
memes.
Troy, and this
gave you the Picard.
So good, yes, yes,
yeah, absolutely.
So,
oh my god!
I thought overall it was just a lot of fun. I mean, you had these Ferengi who thought that they were going to get away with just outright kidnapping people. I mean, and of course, Lwaxana's being Lwaxana and trying to meddle in Troy's love life as Troi and William Riker are just trying to have, a nice casual, maybe too casual, some leave time.
Little smoochy poo.
Maybe just some, friends with bennies, and while they're having some breakfast bennies out in the park,
Why the hell not? It's the 21st century.
Exactly.
You don't really know what's up.
No shame.
Yeah. No, they should do that.
So these Ferengi decide that they're going to kidnap them because one of them decides that he's in love with Lwaxana. Or, well, in love. As much as a Ferengi can be in love.
Wants to possess.
He's in love with her. Would
love to possess. That's a good way to put it.
Yes. To possess her attributes to further his cause of profit, which is the only thing that Ferengi pursue. Is latinum, is money. So, and he said, well, her telepathy can help my negotiations, because even the Ferengi military, it's weird because, the Ferengi have their, Ferengi Defense Force, whatever the hell they call their military, where they've got their little ships and blah, blah. But they're all still like Quark in so much that they're all working a hustle all the time to make money, which is why even going back to the very early in TNG, they were like, well, the Ferengi are going to be the new Klingons and blah, blah, blah. And it was finally, they just up and said, well, you can't really have a villain that they can get what they're looking for by getting it out of a replicator. They're not bloodthirsty warriors. They want money. So it's not that villainous. So anyway, but it was a gem. Peter, how about you?
I've actually only watched this episode all the way through once. It's fun, but I don't know. Lwaxana Troi episodes for me are always a hit or miss. And for me, this one was kind of a miss.
Well, it was far. It was personal.
I don't always like when she starts meddling with Troy's love life in a very particular way, and then it's just like, I don't know. It's not my favorite. It's not a bad episode.
It is a very classic mother-daughter dynamic that those two have.
Yes.
And so I can very much relate with Troi at a lot of areas.
Yes, by what you've described, I totally see where you're coming from. This is also the episode where, because Wesley saves the day, as he has like 50 other times, but Picard finally gives him a reward for it. He gets promoted out of the acting ensign jumpsuit that I noticed that because he wore it in seasons 2 and 3. If you notice when he turns around, the back of it doesn't latch. If you ever notice as he walks away, it zips up in the back like pants do, but there's a top part of it that does this. So anyway, Wesley finally gets graduated to be a real ensign, so he gets a real uniform. And it's funny, he walks out of the turbo lift at the end, and he's so skinny. It's like, what is that? That looked like it came from TNG, the Baby Gap. That's like a little ass outfit. that almost could be a better name for the episode.
Teen. Yeah, definitely gangly teen.
Oh my God. Oh geez.
It did allow him to look pretty cool going forward, though, because wearing the duty uniform looked way better on him than that.
Than any of the weird sweaters or that yellow or.
Well, the first season jumpsuit was just awful, but the gray one was like, it was okay because it had the same sort of look, but it was like, meh.
Right. It was like, meh. Exactly correct. So anyway, okay, Peter, you get the penultimate episode of the season.
All right. Episode 25, Transfigurations, directed by Tom Benko, written by Renee Echeverria. That name becomes very popular.
Big time. Yeah, he's a big dude later on,
1990. The Enterprise rescues a humanoid with amnesia and incredible healing powers. I'm sorry, I can read.
Healing human powers.
Yes, he does that too.
Which he does. He does, big time.
O'Brien's shoulder. It's great. This is one of the first times I see O'Brien decided to do something dangerous on the holodeck, and then he continued to do that.
Yeah,
and he brings
for him.
Next time it's mountain climbing. The other time it's something else. Like, O'Brien, can you maybe turn the safety protocols on? I don't know.
Right. I'm like, how about you dislocate your shoulder with safety protocols?
Because and I think turning them off it's a terrible option because you're just giving people license to do dangerous things, which would be the case in the real world. So anyway, I think we're splitting hairs here. But anyway, back to the episode.
So this is another episode where, actually, this is one of the first episodes where we see the evolution from corporeal to non-corporeal beings. We've seen non-corporeal beings with the Organians in TOS and the Medusa, I suppose. But this is the first time that we've seen that transition. You see a corporeal being become an energy-based life form. And it's kind of interesting where the whole idea is, are we fighting becoming what we are meant to become? And they position it as a physical thing. But the whole concept is are we afraid of the things that we need to change? We're supposed to change going forward, right? And so you have his society, they kill the people who have this gene so that they can't take the next step to become a non-corporeal entity. And so then there's the conflict there, and eventually it comes to a point where he doesn't know this. Obviously, that's where the amnesia comes in, and so it takes them a while to figure out where he comes from. They eventually go find his civilization, and all of this comes out. But we see the bit where, at the end, he evolves, and then he's like, I'm not gonna seek retribution. I now have powers, right? I can destroy your ship if I want to, but I'm not going to.
Because he evolved. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I've evolved. I understand that this is not who we're supposed to be. And you should strive to be more like me, sort of deal, but not the arrogant way, what we hear of. You need to be like me because I'm better. That's not what this is. But so I think that the moral story, as you could say, in this episode is a pretty solid one. So yeah, I tend to like this episode. It does get a little slow with some of the recovery stuff with,
right.
And you do,
because he's basically a stump. Yeah, he's a stump when they take him off the planet. So he's like, here we go, he's guy. And you're right, all the stuff with Geordi and what's her butt, who we saw back earlier in the season, Christy, and because it was the Botch holodeck episode where he's like, I set up a day on the beach and there's a guy playing the violin, and she's just like. But now she finds him irresistible because he got sexy powers from this John guy, and then Worf is like, I've been tutoring him. Remember? There's some good Worf comedy in this one.
Oh yes, Worf is very good in this one. Yeah, for sure.
Worf, this is where Worf starts to become a gem. Worf is a gem.
Right, exactly.
Worf
instead of just
precious.
Being yeah. Oh, precious Worf. Katie, what's your take on this one?
I really, I agree with a lot of Peter points. I think that it was a really great way to show kind of a metaphor for fear of change and fear of moving forward. I did get hung up a little bit just because evolution, it's such a misconstrue of what evolution is. I'm like, does it just happen with one generation? It's over.
It's just one dude.
Yeah, it's over a series of generations. It's not something where it's just like,
plot reasons they had, like, because they said it's a gene that's been kind of evolving. It's like,
it doesn't work that way. It doesn't work
then
that
you
way.
then you just turn into a glowing whatever.
Yeah, then you just turn into a glowing dude in a very obviously like just one of those Halloween, store suits because you can.
Oh yeah, you're right.
Like the
hold on, let me see. Make sure you take off your wristwatch. Yeah, exactly. Oh yeah.
So I mean, like it just made it kind of funny for me where I'm like, aha, 90s graphics. But overall, like they did a great job of building up the relationship between John and Dr. Crusher without it being weird. Like at one point, Will even says, he's like, "Oh, you got a thing?" And she's like, "No, I just kind of find him interesting." And I thought that was really good as far as showing his genuine relationships throughout the ship while he was there and the reason why they would want to be an advocate for him instead of it just being something random of like they'd kind of do with like Troy or someone else or Riker where they're just like, "Oh, yep, and now they've got the hots for this person because they've known him for 20 minutes.
Yes, well, like you said, the evolving sexuality of the 24th century. It's the wild west of dating. I guess. So that's cool. Yeah, I agree with you. Very classic Trek, and seeing how Starfleet defends and risks for new life forms, which is obviously what they're all about. But yeah, it's a very convenient. Like we rescued him, and then he was a stump of a person, and then he regrew, and then he had these powers where he went. Worf was trying to apprehend him, and Worf got hit by a cargo container, and it killed him. And the guy just went boop, and Worf was fine again.
He threw him off a balcony.
Well, I was thinking about the episode. Worf does break his neck.
His energy,
exactly,
pushes him off
the
balcony, and he breaks his neck.
Yeah, breaks his neck. Where later, when he breaks his back in season 5, it'd be awesome if this guy would come back and fix that. But then we would have had that whole great episode. I know, exactly. So, all right. Well, we're moving on to the piece of resistance, the creme de la creme. That would be Star Trek's first bona fide, bone-chilling cliffhanger.
Peter just got simulated.
Oh, no. I went away from what? Of course, that's more than background. But anyway, I'll allow it. This would be The Best of Both Worlds Part 1, directed by Cliff Bull, written by Michael Piller, who's, a pillar of the Star Trek writing community. From June of 1990. I know Katie does not put up with my dad jokes, but it's okay. That's why I'm in charge. Anyway, Captain Picard is kidnapped by the Borg as they begin their invasion of Federation space. Now, the Borg, it's a bit weird how their whole now they're invading because it took them this long to get here, which we find out in Voyager and, certainly even in their appearance in First Contact, the TNG film, that they have these transwarp conduits so they can get from point A to point B in 12 seconds. But yet it took them this long to reach Federation space after first a year ago in the Q episode when they first met. They were like, oh, that was 8,000 light years away or whatever. And then they've just continued on their way here. So throwing all of that out the window, oh my God, is this a classic? Holy cow. I don't think they miss a beat. There's some great characterization, I think, with Riker, because you get another character who comes along who's a bit of a hotshot, and she's, we're talking about Shelby, who's played by the terrific Elizabeth Dennehy, who comes along and saying, yeah, I heard that your job is up for grabs because they want to make you captain again. And he's like, well, no, I don't really want to do that because I like being here. And blah, blah, blah. And he has a moment with Troy, which, again, a postscript to a lot of the action and the excitement that happens in the second half of the episode, where you're seeing a little bit of a character exploration for him and kind of what his motivations are about why won't I move on? Why do I like, being here? It's because it's home. A lot of the characters are finding that this is home for them and they're growing here and they can't really imagine being anywhere else. So right before everything goes absolutely upside down later on in the episode. So, I mean, what else can be said about this? I feel like they hit all the notes. You get a lot of great character moments. You get a lot of great franchise moments that obviously you'll learn to realize as time goes on, because in the Borg's first appearance, they were simply defined and then whisked away. But this brings it back to really what their grand plans are, because they spent a year or they spent 12 seconds thinking about, well, this is how we're going to assimilate this other half of the quadrant, the Alpha Quadrant, the Federation, whatever it is, by having a spokesperson, and we think it should be this Picard guy because he commands the, it's all very by the numbers. You command the flagship of the Federation, and you're going to be our propaganda guy. So yeah, and then of course ends with a classic moment. The Enterprise has devised a weapon that will destroy the Borg cube, or so they think. And then at the very end of it, they go over, they try to rescue Picard, they can't pull it off, and they're all back on the bridge, and everybody's like, Riker, don't push the button, we can find a way to save him. And he's like, no, we're out of time, it's too late, I'm making the impossible decision. He steps up and he says, Mr. Worf, fire. That's the end of the episode. So Patrick Stewart very famously went on to say, that he was going through contract negotiations in the summer of 1990 after this aired, and there was a good chance that he might not have come back. But he tells this great story that he was driving his convertible along the PCH in LA, and somebody pulled up to him and looked over and saw it was him, and it says, you, sir, have ruined my summer, with the big cliffhanger. Oh man. So anyway, I've rambled. Peter, what do you think, Mr. Borg? Mr. Borgman? Okay.
You for like what I said. So let's give you your own.
Okay. Back to Katie.
Okay. I absolutely loved this episode, and I loved to hate Shelby. I just wanted Shelby to knock down so many pegs. Right. And I mean, I did appreciate the comparison with her and Riker, and being, because Picard points out, he's like, well, someone who was an upstart type of first officer when I came aboard, blah, blah, blah. Bad British accent.
Direct quote.
Yeah. And I was like, yes, that is definitely why I didn't like Riker at first, or like why he kind of rubbed me wrong, was because there was some of that bravado that he had with him, but they took it and turned it up to 11 with Shelby, where she is just outright looking at how to undermine him at every opportunity. And I'm like, this is not going to end well for you. Like, how in the world do you think that no one's going to notice that you're just predatory with how you're trying to uprank? So
you're just trying to get his job, and everyone knows.
Yeah, right. And the fact that she's like, you're in my way. Like, she literally says, you're in my way at one point. And it's like, if he's not going to leave, nothing is going to get you in his spot. So why are you trying to
Admiral kicks him out? That's not going to happen.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So, but I did really, really enjoy the entirety of the episode. Overall, I think that. My thought was why the Borg didn't use one of their transwarp is because at first they really didn't have much interest in the humans or the Tyrans.
True.
Because they were your technology, they had been taking some of our technology, but they hadn't really been assimilating anyone. And then they changed their mind and were actually, you know what, I think maybe we will. So it kind of seemed like they're just kind of making a slow meander towards our solar system while they decided.
The scenic route. And it's worse still. It's worse still because you find out many years prior to this, they assimilated Seven of Nine and her parents were from Earth. And so since they assimilated them and then had all of their knowledge, when they just said, oh, here's how we get to Earth, let's go. And they don't. So there's some holes in that, but it's okay.
Yeah. I subscribe to a fan theory, but...
Well, go on.
So...
What's fan theory?
Yeah, so this theory gets into the weeds with a fan show that I'm involved in, which I've mentioned multiple times. So the idea is that the Borg are actually involved in a Cold War with another race. If you're familiar with them, the Bluegill from Conspiracy. And
yeah. Okay.
So they're fighting there, and there comes a point where it's just like for a while, it's just we don't care. So we're doing our own thing. We're gathering technology and doing our thing, and then it gets to a point where this war becomes a thing, and then they're like, well, I guess we need bodies. Let's go get Earth because they seem to be most compatible with our technology, and we're just going to do that. So that's one way out of it. You can subscribe to whatever theory you want because it's never said on screen as to why.
Right. Don't need to know. But I mean, and the episode works out so well without it. You know what I mean? So it's really no big deal.
My favorite TNG episodes, period.
Right. And of course, we technically watched
So
the first part, but I own it as a standalone because they released this as a standalone HD bit back about 10 years ago when they put all the stuff on HD. So I have that on my digital Vudu, and I just whenever I watch it, I watch the whole thing. So
I mean, you kind of
but yeah.
I made the poor life decision of making that as my first introduction for some people to Star Trek. You need a little bit more context for it to work.
Right.
Exactly. Just a little bit. Yeah. And it was, I think, maybe one of my favorite Riker episodes. Just because it really felt like Riker had come into his own. Like I was really rooting for him, and it really just made me like it. It's one of those where, especially watching it, and I'm like, oh, okay, I can definitely see why people just absolutely love Riker. Like this is the Riker that I enjoy, where he's he's smart, he's funny, he's very caring, he's very charismatic, and he's really, really introspective as to why he does the things that he does. And like the line that he gives, like he throws back at Shelby where she's like, you can't make the safe decisions. And he's like, when it comes to this ship and this crew, I absolutely will. And he's he is saying without saying, like, this is my family, this is my home. Absolutely. I'm going to protect it with my life.
Expendable. Don't treat them that way.
Right. Yeah. Right. Exactly. Yeah. God, absolutely correct. Oh, holy cow. So that wraps up season 3 of TNG. So we'll do our regular kind of wrap up of not only this grouping of episodes, but really reaching back to the entirety of the season. If you have a different one that you want to throw out there that you think is best and worst, let's go for it. But Kay, go first. Favorite and least favorite of this grouping?
I think I'm gonna have to go with Sarek as my favorite for this grouping, and then probably Hollow Pursuits for my least favorite. Just again, they've got that weirdness that just kind of taints it for me a little bit.
Gotcha.
I would say best of both worlds, but I want to contain story.
True. I know. No, I agree with you. And did you have a different episode in the season that really jumped out at you that you can think about off the top of your head? It's okay if you don't.
I can't remember all of them right now. You can't.
That's okay. I know.
You remember things
I know. I totally understand. All right, Peter, go for it.
I know it's not the complete story, but The Best of Both Worlds is still my favorite episode out of this chunk. It's just a great episode. I love the Borg when they're done right, and this does it really well. So this is one of my favorites. Least favorite, I mean, really the only episode you heard me go meh was Menage a Troi. So
fair. Gotcha.
I know people love it. I love the memes. I don't care for the episode.
I mean, when you don't like the starring character, that totally stacks.
I don't mind Loxana. It's just sometimes she rubs me the wrong way in an episode, and it's just like, it's hard.
There's a whole lot of wrong rubbing. I will.
From the other part of the series is yesterday's Enterprise. I know I wasn't here for that one. That's one of my favorites.
Oh yeah, that is a really, really good one.
I mean, and again, to do it in reverse order, that's my favorite for the season 2. I totally agree with you. My favorite of this grouping, again, Best of Both Worlds, because of the Riker stuff really more than anything else, because he is my favorite character and kind of my role model for Star Trekking. I just overall, like, I'll sit down in a chair that way too, but I usually just do it to amuse April because she knows I'm going to do it. And then least favorite of this grouping, I mean, they're all so strong, but I just felt like the episode with John, the Transfiguration episode, just was kind of I don't know. I don't know exactly why it didn't click with me, but it just really did not.
Not every episode works for everybody. It'd still be good.
Yeah,
it might not be enjoyable.
And not everything can be a Menage a Troi. Well, cool. Well, this was awesome. So this wraps up, obviously, as I said, season 3. Next episode, we're doing a little break in format. We're going to take on the Kelvin versus JJ Star Trek films. That's Star Trek 09. Into Darkness from 13. And yes, we have to. And then Star Trek Beyond from 2016. We're going to be welcoming special
Peter's
guest
going to be magically sick that day, I think.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I'm really ill. We're welcoming special guest Jen Watson, who's a cosplayer friend of ours from Chicago that we worked with on some of our shoots. And it should be interesting. So that's going to be a feature-length episode where we break down those 3 movies. But without further ado, and I did add something extra to the outro, but Katie, you're up.
Yes.
Outro.
More information about Starfleet International, please visit Grant Petoskey on Facebook and Twitter. And new info, visit patreon.com/secretfriendsunite to support our network and get access to exclusive content, interviews, and much more.
Woohoo! Awesome! Well, friends, thank you as always for joining us. I'm going to tell you that sharing is caring. Keep on trekking.
And wherever you go, go boldly.
Peace and long life.
This podcast is part of the Secret Friends Unite podcasting network. Visit secretfriendsunite.com for more great shows, articles, news, reviews, and more. Secret Friends Unite podcasts are available on Apple, Google, Spotify, and other podcast services around the world. If you'd like to be part of the conversation, you can join us on Facebook or our new Discord server, or follow @SecretFriendsU on Twitter. Please subscribe to Secret Friends Unite on YouTube and visit our merch store at tpublic.com. Just search Secret Friends Unite. Thanks for listening.